What's up, everybody? Today is November 11th, 2023, and I am about to make some pretty bold presidential predictions for 2024. First, take a drink of water, because it's going to be a long video. So, it's been a while since I made any kind of predictions for the 2024 election, so I decided to make my most recent prediction video. I'm going to start off with a big one. And that is, I do not believe that Donald Trump, will be reelected president in 2024 or ever. Donald Trump will not become president ever again. So, that is a pretty big, bold prediction. I have more. But let me get into the reasons why I don't believe. Remember, basically everything in this video is my opinion. I mean, there's going to be some factual information, but obviously all the predictions are just my opinion. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, of course. They're my predictions, and I'm pretty confident in them. Okay, so why? Why won't Trump win election again? So one of the biggest things is the fact that Trump was president. He ran for president again as the incumbent president, and he lost. So that is the first big hit against him, because being the incumbent president is such a positive in the favor of that president, that to lose to Joe Biden in 2020, but in general, to lose the presidency while you are the president shows that you're not that popular, or as popular as you need to be to win the election, especially to Joe Biden, to a very aging senior citizen, Joe Biden. The fact that Trump lost to Joe Biden in 2020 was a big sign that, hey, there's a lot of people that don't want Trump to be president. And that's pretty much what it was. So the 2020 election was pretty much not so much Joe Biden winning the election as much as it was Donald Trump losing the election. And so what I mean is, Biden really didn't have a lot of supporters, especially fervent supporters. It was more like most people were like, who voted for Biden were like, well, we just don't want Trump to be president. So pretty much whoever was on the Democratic ticket, that's who they're going to vote for. And it was like, well, Biden seems to be the most likely person who's going to win. Vote for Biden. Okay? And so anyhow, so the fact that Trump lost while being president, that is one of the biggest things. If you can't win the election while being president, how are you going to try to come back and win again? Now, that being said, is not impossible. There has been one president that I'm aware of in history that was president. I believe it was Grover Cleveland. He was president for 4 years in the 1800s. I don't remember what years. I think it was like the 1880s, the early 1880s, I believe it was. He was president for 4 years. Lost the office, and then 4 years after that, he did win again. So there is one case in all U.S. presidential history where someone was president, lost presidency, and then came back again, right? But again, that was over 100 years ago, for one. So obviously times have changed. And two, that president wasn't an impeached president, which Trump is, which also hurts him. So that gets into another category, presidents who were impeached before. And that is only 3 presidents: Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, and who's the third president? Andrew Johnson, I believe, was the third president. He was the first president to be impeached, but he's the other president to have been impeached, right? Okay, so these are just basically historical facts, statistics that are relevant to Donald Trump, right? Like I said, one thing that Donald Trump has in common with, I believe it was Grover Cleveland, is Grover Cleveland lost the presidency, but he was able to come back and win again, right? But there's been other presidents who were president, tried to run for re-election. I think there's been a few of them, and lost. And so there was only one case study in U.S. presidential history where a president lost and was able to come back. So, slight hope, but again, over 100 years ago. Okay. However, as far as impeached presidents, so Bill Clinton, he can't be used for case study because he was impeached in his second term, so he didn't run for re-election. But Andrew Johnson was impeached in his first term, and he just decided not to run again. I guess he figured, hey, and also Andrew Johnson was acquitted of the charges, just like Trump was. But even so, it's like, I'm not going to run again. Probably was like, hey, I skirted the charges. I'm just going to not run for president again. And so there has been no president in U.S. history that has been impeached and has even ran for office again, let alone ran for office and won again. Okay, so that's a bit of an unknown. But the fact that he was impeached hurt him, and I think that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump wasn't reelected while he was in office, right? And it's just another thing that adds up. It's like, okay, you were president, you lost the presidency. So obviously a lot of people wanted you out. If you were that good of a president overall, then you would have been reelected, but you weren't. You did not get a straight 8-year term. So obviously something that the people, this is not Matt's opinion. This is just the voters, the overall, electoral votes, in the United States. They didn't choose Donald Trump to be president again. Okay, and you're an impeached president, and and now it's been 4 years since you have been president. So the main question with Donald Trump is, has anything changed? Basically, has he gotten better as a candidate in the past 3 years since he's been president? And the answer is no. Actually, quite the contrary, it's gotten worse. So not only was Donald Trump impeached, charged for crimes while he was in office, now he's being charged for crimes again as a civilian. And so his public persona, I guess you would say, is even becoming more tarnished. I believe Chris Christie even mentioned that in one of the debates. Chris Christie's also running for president. He was like, we don't want someone basically running for the office of the president who's sitting here fighting these criminal charges and lawsuits and all this stuff. And it's true. It's like I said, you're already impeached while you're president. You're already charged with a crime while you're president. Now you're being charged, with crimes again and lawsuits and all this stuff. It's like, dude, you have other stuff going on. How do you expect the citizens of the United States to elect you to be head of the country when you can't even get your own affairs and your own life together? Literally, you're fighting lawsuits and crimes and all this kind of stuff. So how can you expect the U.S. public to elect you again when when your life is in shambles? Your kids are having to go on stand and testify, and you have to go and testify and all this stuff. This is the guy who's running for president. Just doesn't look good. His public image is very, very tarnished. And again, this is all on top of the fact that Donald Trump didn't win re-election as the incumbent president, which is a huge, huge advantage. You guys, anyone in politics, and they'll tell you, if you're the incumbent president running for president again, it's a huge, huge advantage. And Donald Trump, having that advantage, lost. So I'm going to finish up talking about Donald Trump. So while Donald Trump does, in fact, this is fact, not Matt's opinion, while Donald Trump does, in fact, still have millions of followers, supporters, people who will vote for him for president, I do not believe that it's enough. So I'm kind of transitioning into talking about the other candidates. So in general, when you're attempting to predict, like say, you want to make a prediction of who's going to become the next president of the United States, right? And you're like, I'm saying, say you wanted to do this or whoever, right? And you're looking at the different candidates. There's two main questions that you have to ask yourself that will tell you or give you an idea if the person has a chance of winning. And those two questions are: A, can the individual win states? And B, can they win enough states to become president? Now, notice that I didn't say, can a candidate get votes? Anybody can get votes. I can get votes. You could put a chimpanzee and run for president. They're going to get votes. Votes doesn't matter. It's whether you can get enough electoral votes in any given state to win that state. So whether you're looking at Donald Trump or Chris Christie or Kamala Harris, any potential person running for president, the two main questions, if you're trying to predict who's going to win, you have to ask yourself, can this individual win states? And the second question is, can they win enough states to actually win the presidency? Okay? So, finishing up with Donald Trump, yes, the answer is yes. Indeed, Donald Trump has millions of supporters, and yes, indeed, Donald Trump, like, let's just say, if he were the Republican nominee, just say, yes, Donald Trump can win states. Okay? And go back to 2016, you could also answer the second question, yes, obviously, he won the presidency. Yes, Donald Trump could win enough states to become president, right? However, we're not in 2016 anymore. We're in 2023. So reassessing Trump now in 2023, like I said, with everything else taken in consideration, like I said, the fact he was in office and lost to office and impeached, and now he's being charged with other stuff and all these kind of things. Not to mention Donald Trump is older now. A lot of people don't mention this, but Donald Trump is almost 80 years old himself. If he did get reelected, he would turn 80 years old while in office. We'd have another aging president, so on and so forth, right? So reassessing Donald Trump. Again, asking the same questions. A, can Donald Trump win states? Yes, of course, definitely. Okay, but B, can Donald Trump win enough states to become president in 2023? No. The answer to that is no. Sorry, Trumpers. Okay, so we're finished with him. Donald Trump will not, in my opinion, Donald Trump will not become president again, ever. Okay? Now, who will, right? So let's break this up. Let's kind of backtrack a little bit and break it up between who's going to become the Democratic nominee and who's going to become the Republican nominee for president. Okay, so let's start with the Democratic nominee because the field is there. Technically, right now there is no field because it's presumed that Joe Biden will run again, and if Joe Biden did run for president again, no Democrat would go up against him. He would just become the Democratic nominee, and he would run against whoever the Republican nominee is, right? Assuming he did run again, okay? But this is where my other predictions come in. So in that, I do not believe that Joe Biden will run for president again. Either one or two things is going to happen. Either A, taking in consideration that Joe Biden is an 80-year-old man who has very noticeable, like I would say, mental degradation. Whether he has dementia or whatever. I mean, he gets lost on stage or whatever. I mean, everybody knows these things, right? Okay, so either A, Joe Biden will not mentally be able to finish his term out, either, the people around him or, whoever the quote unquote handlers, if you want to call them that, they'll say, hey, Joe, maybe doctors, maybe a doctor comes say, hey, I think he's gotten to a point, I don't think he should be running the country anymore. The vice president has to step in, which would be Kamala Harris. Okay, so that is a possible scenario. Like I said, Joe Biden is an 80-year-old man. I hate to say it, but like a failing brain, he's not doing well. I have nothing against him, but it's just facts. It's just facts. He doesn't seem to be mentally doing that great. And again, he is 80 years old. And so there is a strong possibility that he might not even be able to finish the next year of his term mentally. If he degrades more in his mental cognition, someone might come in, hey, you can't do this anymore. And so Kamala Harris will step in. And so that would be the first case scenario where Joe Biden would not run again in 2024. Then obviously the other case, again, taking consideration he is an 80-year-old man, if he happens to pass away during that time, obviously he can't run again. Okay? And then the third scenario, let's say Joe Biden, he stays level in his mental acuity or whatever you want to call it, and he doesn't pass away or anything like that. But even if that happens, I still believe that like his wife or someone close to him be like, hey, you got what you wanted. You were vice president, under Obama. You got the presidency. He was, he's been in politics forever. He achieved all of his goals. You don't need to run again. Go up there and potentially embarrass yourself. Someone close to him, I believe, will say, don't run again, Joe. You don't need to do it. And I really, really, really do not believe Joe Biden. Even in the best case scenario, he does well mentally, physically. I really don't believe Joe Biden will run again for president. Okay? Now, that being said, since he's not, I don't believe he's going to run, then he's not going to be the Democratic nominee. So who will be the Democratic nominee? Okay? There's one more person I will mention before I mention the person who I think is going to be, and that is the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Okay, his name has been floated around. If by some chance, so if some chance, say Biden announced today, hey, I'm not going to run for president anymore, there would be Democrats who come up and someone has to be the Democratic nominee, and so there would be several people who would run. One of them being Gavin Newsom. I would say there's a strong possibility of that, again, if something would happen to Joe Biden. Right. But regardless, I'm just going to throw him out real quick. I'm telling you right now, Gavin Newsom definitely will not become president of the United States, at least not in 2024. I'm not going to predict further than 2024 right now. And I also do not believe that Gavin Newsom would become the Democratic nominee. So keep in mind, this is from someone, I'm from California, and I don't like him very much. Various reasons, but one of the main ones is, he's kind of like Justin Trudeau of Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada, just two-faced. Like during the COVID pandemic, Gavin Newsom was telling, all of us in California, keep your masks on and, don't congregate together and all this kind of stuff, right? Meanwhile, he was having parties with his friends and congregating with his friends, no mask on, just doing the opposite of what he was telling other people to do. And, it just has a really bad stench on him, right? As far as that, just not being a good leader, in my opinion, right? And the second bigger thing is Gavin Newsom represents everything that's kind of bad about California. Okay, so you have to understand that most states in the United States don't like California and how California runs things, whether it's the gun laws or tax laws, the fact that California has a lot of homeless and, high prices and high taxes and all these kinds of things, right? A lot of people don't like the political things of California, right? And then, so when they're thinking about someone like Gavin Newsom, say he were to run for president, right? Again, he has the stench of California, if you will, on him. And people outside of California, regardless of if he could win California or not in the general election or whatever, right? Other states, they're going to look at him like, no, we don't want him as president because he's going to make the United States like California. And people don't want that. They're like, well, we don't want our state to be like California, again, with homeless and taxes and, maybe, abortion things, whatever it may be, everyone else in the country doesn't want to be like California. And so they're not going to elect, the current governor of California to be president. And someone might say, hey, well, a governor of California has been president before, Ronald Reagan, right? Yes. But Ronald Reagan is no Gavin Newsom, right? Completely different people. And you have to understand, California during Reagan's time was way different than California now. California wasn't as messed up back then either. I'm not going to get into that whole thing because now we're kind of sidetracked. But anyhow, Gavin Newsom's not going to become the Democratic nominee or president. I don't want to make this video too long, okay? So cancel him out right away. And the only other major person I can think of that has a chance of becoming the Democratic nominee and potentially president, the only other person I can think of off any research I've done or top of my head, everything, is Kamala Harris. And it's not because Kamala Harris is also from California as well. But it's not because Kamala Harris is liked or anything positive about her record as, I forget if she was Attorney General. I forget what she was in California. It's simply the fact that Kamala Harris is currently the Vice President of the United States, right? And so, if something were to happen to Joe Biden, whether he can't finish his full term or he passes away, for whatever reason he can't finish his full term as president, because she's vice president, she automatically becomes president. This is one thing that not a lot of people talk about. It's like people don't seem to realize Kamala Harris is like this close to becoming president of the United States. She is the second in line to, like I said, an 80-year-old man who's failing in his mental health, and like stumbles around and falls down and doesn't even know how to get off stage and all this kind of stuff. Kamala Harris is second in line to that man. If anything happens to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States by default. Okay? And so, first of all, if we're talking about who's going to become the next president of the United States in general, forget being elected. Again, if anything happens to Joe Biden, he's got basically like 365 days. Well, he has 1 year left to try to make it. If he doesn't make that 365 days for whatever reason, Kamala Harris becomes president until the next election. And if she does that, if Kamala Harris, slides into office because whatever happens to Biden, she automatically becomes, someone could challenge her and try to become the Democratic nominee. It's not going to work. I'm telling you right now, this is part of my prediction. If Kamala Harris slides into the office of the president because something happens to Joe Biden, she's going to be the Democratic nominee. Period. Point blank. End of story. And second part of my prediction, as far as Kamala Harris is concerned, I believe that even if something doesn't happen to Joe Biden, again, say he finishes the rest of his term, he's fine, whatever, I still think, because I don't think Joe Biden's going to run, he's going to give her the nudge. I think she would be great. They're going to strategically time it right so no one else could, run against her and challenge her. So I think that basically in any case scenario, as long as something doesn't happen to Kamala Harris, she's going to be the Democratic nominee. I believe that. At any other prediction you hear in this video, I believe that more strongly than anything else, that Kamala Harris is going to be the Democratic nominee for 2024. That is 100% my prediction. I would be shocked and amazed and surprised if anyone else became the Democratic nominee. Okay, so now we're done with the Democrats. Okay, again, I believe that Kamala Harris, by some means, whether she slips into the office of the president or not, or whatever, she gets the nudge from Joe Biden, whatever, I believe Kamala Harris will become the 2024 Democratic nominee. Okay, now who's going to become the Republican nominee? All right, so the way I do my predictions is I do process of elimination. So I look at who are the major candidates running for president, and then I slowly chop them off from there. I go through all kinds of things about them, like I said, their age, their mental health, their whatever political experiences, everything about the candidate, their popularity, just their views on things, abortion or the death penalty, anything. And then I use that information to say, okay, is this person likely? Again, can this person win states? Can this person win enough states to become president of the United States? Right? Okay, so let's. I'm just going to take the people who currently show up for the Republican debates, who qualified for the Republican debates, plus Trump, because he's qualified, just chooses not to go. So there's Trump. There's I believe his name is Tim Scott, the black guy. Nikki Haley, the governor, the only female in the race, and governor of South Carolina or something like that, right? Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey. Vivek Ramsey, I don't know how to say his last name. Vivek, Indian guy. And then not Gavin Newsom. Ron DeSantis, run-of-the-mill white guy, governor of Florida. Okay, those are the 5 people. That's 5, right? Trump, Vivek, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and Chris Christie. 6 people. Okay, I already told you why Trump is not going to be the president, and I do not even believe Trump will be the Republican nominee either. I don't even believe, like I said, he's so embroiled in so much mess. His life is so tangled right now in so much mess. I think the Republican voters, forget the general election right now. I think Republican voters overall are going to choose someone who's not embroiled in all this nonsense. I mean, really, when you think about it logically, do you really want someone running for president whose life is in legal shambles? I wouldn't, and I don't believe the Republican voters are going to either. Again, this is me recognizing that Trump has millions of supporters. I understand that, but I don't think it's enough to even become the Republican nominee, let alone president. Okay, so who will become the Republican nominee? So let's start process of elimination to get rid of some more people. Tim Scott. Tim Scott, he's not very well known. He's just kind of like he's almost like a placeholder, it seems like, in the Republican debates. Honestly, if you want my honest opinion, I would say that he might be the next person to drop out of the race. You never know. Sometimes even candidates who don't have a lot of, like, aren't getting a lot of votes or support or whatever, not even getting a lot of money. Sometimes candidates have money on their own and they're able to push along their campaign. He could be one of those who just kind of just sticks around just cause. But if I had to guess, I would say he might be the next one to go. We just lost Mike Pence. Mike Pence dropped out of the race, you know. He didn't have any support, like, whatsoever. And so Mike Pence dropped out. And if I had to guess who the next person to drop out would be, it's probably going to be Tim Scott. Okay, so no, I don't believe that Tim Scott has enough support overall. And especially, I hate to say it, but you got to take into consideration he is black, and there's still a lot of people in the United States who don't want a black person as president. Just because you're not racist, I'm not racist, that maybe you wouldn't care about it, I wouldn't care about it, there's still lots and lots of people who just wouldn't vote for someone because they're black. I mean, there's people who wouldn't vote for someone because they're Mexican or maybe Indian too, right? I mean, there's people who wouldn't vote for a person because they're female. So people vote on other things besides politics. That's a fact. It's just a fact, right? Okay, and so it's hard enough being a black guy running for office, okay, let alone someone who's just, you know, not too charismatic, and like I said, just doesn't have a strong following. So yeah, so Tim Scott is not going to be the Republican nominee, in my opinion, and he's not going to be president. Moving on. Who do we go to next? I guess Nikki Haley. So Nikki Haley, I'm kind of like on the fence with her a little bit, because I believe, this is total, not anything etched in fact or anything, I believe that soon, I guess, I would say between this election and the 2028 election, I believe that we will get a female president. Whether, like I said, it's Kamala Harris slipping in, or someone like Nikki Haley, or some other woman coming, you know, out of the woodwork, I believe before 2030, we will get the first female president in the United States. Okay. I just think that, you know, the time is getting really close to that. Okay. That being said, since Nikki Haley is the only female running, just that alone, I think, gets her a slight edge over all the other guys. You know, she could talk personally about abortion, maybe how it's affected her, you know, from the woman's stance, from, you know, all that kind of thing. She's the only major candidate that's a female, right? Even so, and in that, she's even, as a Republican, you know, a lot of times Republicans take a hard stance against, say, abortion, like Ron DeSantis, and I'll get to that in a moment, right? But she has not. She just said in the last debate that she was like, hey, I'm personally against abortion, she said, but even so, I'm not for making it so you don't have a choice to have an abortion, which is like, you know, it's for a Republican candidate to say this, like, oh wow, they're really starting to, you know, ease up a little bit on this abortion thing. And it's a strategic thing. It's like, you know, you got to understand there's millions of women out there who do, you know, support the right to get an abortion, and the whole it's my body, my choice, all that kind of stuff. And these women can vote. There's maybe millions of guys out there who are like support abortion or whatever. And so if a candidate comes up there again like Ron DeSantis and oh no, I'm against abortion, and ban it and outlaw it and lock them all up, or I mean he's not necessarily that extreme, but I'm just saying you're just gonna lose those voters, right? So she's being smart and strategic about it. Be like, I'm not gonna totally go against it. I'm gonna be smart about it. Say, hey, my personal belief, I'm against abortion, but I'm not against you getting abortion, she says, right? So that's smart. However, I've heard, people say, people from her own state, whatever state she was governor of, they're, kind of sour on her a little bit. And, just in general, I don't know. She just doesn't have like the charismatic vibe that, you would think that a person needs to become president. So I won't say in absolute terms that like, no, she won't become president. But I want to say that if I had to make a prediction, I don't believe she will become president or the Republican nominee. I could be wrong. On this one, this is I'm not as hard on this one because I'm not so sure because like I said, she is a woman and just that fact alone might help her, might hurt her. Who knows? But if someone put my back to the wall and say, hey, make a prediction, I would say, no, I don't believe that Nikki Haley will become the Republican nominee. Okay? Moving on, because this video is getting long. Or it is long. Sorry. Ron DeSantis. Okay? Ron DeSantis is too hard on abortion. Okay? Almost, like I said, to the point of, like I said, if I'm president, I'm gonna, try my hardest to ban it across the nation. Or I don't know if he did say that leave it up to the states or whatever, but he's very anti-abortion, right? And like I said, you have to understand that there's millions of people out there who can vote who are not against abortion, and they want, especially women, they want to be able to, do whatever with their body. They consider it health care or whatever it is. That's what they believe. If they want to get an abortion or whatever, they believe they should be able to. And so if a candidate comes up there and be like, no, you can't do that with your body, they're like, I'm not going to vote for you, and they're going to vote for someone else, right? And just in general, forget the abortion thing. DeSantis is kind of the opposite, although not as bad as Gavin Newsom. Nobody wants their state to be like California, right? But most people don't want their state to be like Florida either. And so when you're from a big state like that and you're governor, people are going to look at that. They're going to be like, hey, we don't want our state to be our state to become like your state. And so if someone, like I said, like Gavin Newsom of California or Ron DeSantis of Florida, they're governor and they're running for president, and they're very strict on their policies or whatever, you start to worry that, hey, if they become president, they're going to try to make national laws that are going to reflect how their state was. And again, people don't want their state to be like California. People don't want their state to be like Florida. And so that kind of sours people on voting for them as well. So again, getting back to my initial thing saying, hey, can a person win states, and can a person win enough states to become president? I would say DeSantis is one, and even Nikki Haley too, that they both could win states. I'm not taking that away from them, but I would say that neither Nikki Haley nor Ron DeSantis could win enough states to become president. That's my prediction. So I don't believe Ron DeSantis will become president, and I also don't believe that he would become the Republican nominee either. Okay, now we're down to two, Vivek and Chris Christie. Okay, Vivek. I'm sorry, Mr. Vivek, but you're not going to become the Republican nominee or president for a couple of reasons. One, I'm going to tell you, one thing that's funny to me is, are you aware that he's like really rich? And B, he's part of Big Pharma. He literally, Vivek started up his own pharmacy company that he still owns like 10% stake in. All these people nowadays talking about how bad Big Pharma is and all this kind of stuff. It's like, hello, Vivek is part of Big Pharma. Literally owns his own pharmaceutical company. He's part of Big Pharma, and he's like a billionaire. So that's already, that would leave a bad taste. If I was a Republican voter, like I said, we're not even getting to the general election. If I was a Republican voter, that would put a sour taste in my mouth right away, right? And besides that, his other thing that Vivek has going against him is he's too young. And now I know there might be some, say, 20-something people, 20-something years old people out there, 30-something years old people out there be like, wait a minute, it's too young. He's almost 40 years old, 38, or he's going to be, I think, 39 when the election comes around, right? Young in politics is not young, in general speak. Young in politics is in 20s and 30s and even 40s. You're barely starting to become of, like, say, political readiness, I guess you would say, maybe in your 40s. But he's still in his 30s, right? So he's considered almost like a baby in politics, Vivek is. You got to understand